Alright guys, so we are on chapter 4, lesson 1, creating a selection with the rectangular marquee tool. Tells us to start Photoshop and make sure I'm maximized. Open 4.1, so Control O. Let's go to the data files. This is for Photoshop CS5 data files. We're in chapter 4. And this is asking us to open 4.1 and file save it as kitchen table. So Control Shift S to open the file save it as dialog box. I'm going to save it on my desktop and I'll call this guy kitchen table. Okay, as always, I don't have to put a file extension on a save as dialog box. Just click on save. And you're going to notice the file name change and the file name tab over here. My maximize compatibility dialog box does not show because I already clicked on do not show this again. Step number 2, open 4.2. So Control O. Let me see here. I'm going to go to the DNR again. Enter Photoshop, data files, chapter 4, 4.2. And that's this guy here. It does not tell me to save anything. It just tells me to open. And I need to make sure that the ruler is in pixels. How do you make sure of that? I go to a ruler. If you don't see the ruler, go to View and click on Rulers or Control R. So my rulers are displayed. And to make sure that I'm on pixels, I can right click on the ruler itself and make sure that the check mark is next to pixels. Okay, you have to be careful. In Photoshop, it's kind of good. Oh no, actually it doesn't do that. Okay, so Photoshop, if you change on one side into one unit of measure, it actually changes on both. I think InDesign, I'm not sure that InDesign does that, so you have to pay attention. Make sure they're both in pixels. Step number 3, we're going to go to the rectangular marquee tool here on toolbox. I'm going to choose the rectangular marquee tool, or M. Number 4, we're going to make sure that the value in the feathering box is 0, so we don't want to soften the edge of this tool at all. Okay, so make sure this is 0 on the feather here on the top. Options bar, they call it. Number 5, we're going to drag the marquee pointer to approximately 10 horizontal and 10 vertical. How do you know the position of this? You have to have a panel that shows you the coordinates. Okay, at this point, I don't have that. I'll Control 0 to center this guy here. And you could use the ruler. You could use the ruler to say, okay, I want 10, which is about here, to 10, which is about here. Or you can go to Window, and I think the info panel gives you positioning. Yeah, right here. So I want to close the other ones. Close tab group. I don't need any of this junk here. No, I don't need that. I'm going to use the info tab. And pay attention to the X and Y coordinates here. When I mouse over, it starts to move. And it gives me precise information on where I want to be. So they tell me here that, and they say approximately, so it doesn't need to be perfect, right? Let me see here. 10H, 10V, vertical. Interesting. How do I get this to display here? I don't know why, but I'm at 1010. You see the X and Y here. I don't know that I can change this. Let me see if we can change. Actual pixels, blah, blah, blah. No, it doesn't tell me anything. So, anyways, X is horizontal, Y is vertical, just as your Cartesian graphs in math. So, if I go from 1010, they wanted me to go to 210 and 180. So, 210, 180 at the bottom. Okay, so, something like this. They want the cup to 10. Okay, if I go, I need to go to 11 or to 12. Okay, because otherwise I'm going to start missing part of the cup here. So this is what you want. You want a piece of the cup. Alright, so now I have figure 4, compare that. They actually cut out. They got really close. Okay, I'm going to actually get the whole thing. Okay, number 6, click the Move tool, and we're going to drag the coffee cup to any location on the kitchen table. You see, mine is not a floating tab window, so it's not a big deal. I can just leave it like this, because in the previous one, I think it was on the playground or on the balloon guy, you actually had to make it a floating window and drag it from one side to another. But I don't have to do that. I can just keep it on tabbed, use the move tool, click on my selection, mouse over, pull it over the file name tab of the next file, and bring it in. And that creates a new layer. Okay? Any problems? I don't hear anything, so I'm going to keep moving. Alright. I am done with page 4.7. Move on to 4.8. And in here, we're going to position a selection with the move tool. On step number 1, make sure that move tool, or V, is selected. And it just so happens that if you look at my screen on the options bar, the show transform controls is checked. Okay? By default, is not. If it's not checked, then you don't see the anchor point, 9-point anchor point thing around the object, okay, on the layer. I usually leave it on because it shows me where the center of the object, rotation object is, and also shows me the anchor point, so I can, you know, if I wanted to resize or rotate or whatever, I have those options here. So anyways, and it also shows me the object that is part of this layer. So number 1, ours is active. My rulers are appearing. They are in pixels, so I'm good to go there. Number 2, we want to see guides. So these are the guides. These little blue lines, aqua, light blue. Guides are something that are not displayed on the final product. So if I were to actually render this into a file, save it into a JPEG, none of the guides would actually show. Guides only show on your PSD file, and they only show if you have, where is the view? Show. If you show under view, show, if guides is checked, you see the guides. If the guides is unchecked, you won't see the guides. So if you don't see the guides, go to view, show, guides. You want to see the guides at this point. There are going to be reference points for you guys. Number 3, we're going to drag the coffee cup so that the lower corner snaps to the ruler guides approximately 220 to 520. 220 is down here to 520 is about here. Okay, so they want this lower left corner to snap to that corner of the guide. Okay, so boom, something like this. Okay, and you notice that there's a magnetic action to these guides. My cup is actually snapping. If yours is not snapping, it means that under view, snap, that is not checked. If it's not checked, it'll just bleed through. It will have no magnetic action at all. Whereas if it's on, your object, your selection, is going to tend to be attracted to guides. Okay, so sometimes there's something that you want, sometimes it gets in the way. So I always say, I always leave it off. I usually don't want things to snap, because if you have a lot of guides, they may be snapping to the wrong guide and you lose precision. But sometimes in this case, you want guides. You want to align things in guides, and therefore turn snap on. Okay? All right. No questions? Everybody good? All right. So compare your image to figure 5. Does mine look like it? Mine does. My saucer is a little overhang over the table here, exactly like they have. Not a good position to put a cup, I would say, right? Number 4, we're going to rename this layer 1, we're going to name it to coffee cup. When you're naming layers, always be descriptive of what the layer contains, okay? It's always helpful for you guys to just, at a glance, look at it and not rely too much on what the thumbnail shows. In this case, it's very easy to see. Okay, there's a little thinky, little small thing that is yellow here. I can tell that it's coffee cup. But if I can have a name that tells me exactly what it is, it's very helpful. We're going to deselect a selection. So I'm going to go back to 4.2, they tell me. And then we're going to deselect. So this selection is interesting, that a lot of other programs, once you make a selection and you click off and you do other things, the selection goes away. That is not true in Photoshop. Selections are very important in Photoshop, so they will stay there. until you tell them not to be there. So click on select, or click on the select, or the shortcut key that I use all the time, which is Control D. Okay, Control D is your deselect button, and you should use that all the time. We are done now to page 410. We're moving on to page 410, and on page 410, the labs create a selection with the magnetic lasso tool. Some of you guys are having a problem with it. The magnetic lasso is a little tricky sometimes, so I'm going to be careful with that. I'm going to put my layers panel with the info panel here together. Alright. Alright, so here we go. Step number 1. We are on, clicking the magnetic lasso tool. Where is that at? It's under my lasso tool. There's 3 of them. One is regular lasso, one's polygonal, and one's magnetic. So I'm going to go to the magnetic one, the one that has a little magnet. And then change the settings in the option bar so that they're same as the figure 8, which is feathering is 0, anti-alias is checked, width is 20, let's change that, contrast is 10%, and the frequency is 57. Now what I can tell you right now, this is the width of the amount of pixels that your magnetic lasso is going to sample. Okay, so the greater the number, the less sensitive it's going to be. I'll put it this way. And then, oh, I'm sorry. No, this is just a setting for path. Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. So this is exactly what I said. The contrast here, I don't exactly know. Okay, this is how sensitive the contrast for the tool is. Okay, which means the smaller the contrast, the more sensitive your tool is going to be. The greater the contrast, the less sensitive your tool is going to be. 57 here under frequency, and I'm going to try to get a tooltip to show up here. Oh, here you go. This is sets the frequency at which anchor points are added to the path. So you're going to notice that when we drag the lasso tool, it's going to create a number of anchor points for any given distance we drag it. And if you want a lot of anchor points, you create a higher number of frequency. If you're less anchor points, you will put a smaller number of anchor points. How would you decide that? Experience tells me that if you're selecting a complex form with a lot of nooks and crannies, you want a higher frequency on this tool. If you're selecting an object that there's not a lot of anchor and nooks and crannies like this cup on a saucer, it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of little nooks and crannies that go in and out of the shape. And if you have an object like that, I will probably put something a smaller number in frequency. A lot of things in Photoshop are trial and error. Okay, so you have to play with the settings, changing them around with a basic understanding of what they do to affect your outcome. So anyways, we're going to open 4.3, which happens to be the tomato. I'm going to zoom in, Control 0. I want a bigger tomato to be able to see. And zoom is always your friend. Okay, so try to use zoom whenever you can to have a good view of the object that you're working on. Anyway, so we're going to open this, and on number 3, step number 3 and 410, we're going to click the magnetic lasso tool pointer anywhere at the edge of the tomato to create my first fastening point. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go right here. Boom, click. Drag my tool slowly around the tomato. And then we're going to, they say clicking at the point of each leaf may be helpful because by clicking, you force the tool to create an anchor point. Okay? So let's take a look here. I'm going to go around. You see that I don't have to get very close to the object. The tool automatically sucks in and gets around. And by the way, you're not holding down the button at this point. Okay? Now, I'm going to zoom in here, if I can. Let me see, Control plus, okay, Control plus, and I'm going to get really close here. You see how I'm inside of the leaf? I'm going to click in here because I want to force an anchor point. Click, let go. I'm going to go around the leaf, and I'm going to actually click here, click here. You see how I'm actually creating anchor points on purpose in here? Okay, sometimes this tool needs some help. Okay, so, and I'm giving it its help. I'm starting to lose view of what the tool is doing, so I'm gonna hold down spacebar. In the middle of the tool, holding down spacebar turns your tool into a hand grab, and I can click and drag and zoom and shift my image downwards so I can keep looking at what's happening. Click. Let's go up the leaf. On the tip, click. Let's come down. Click. Oh, this one didn't go. Okay, click again. Let's go up. Click, click, click. Click. And drag, click. Let's start another one. Click, click. Let's go down this guy. Click. And when I mouse over, pay attention to my screen here. You notice that around my tool there's no shapes right now, but if I mouse over to an anchor point, it's gonna give me an option. You see that little circle on the lower right? That shows me that it's going to close the path. And when I click on that, boom, it creates selection. Control 0 to zoom out to see my selection. It seems to me that I have a little issue here, but this exercise is just very rough, okay? It doesn't need to be precise. And I'm on step number... I'm done with the step number 4. Okay, so we're on page 411. We're going to click the Move tool, V, on my keyboard, on the Tools panel, and then we're going to go step number 2. We're going to move to drag the tomato into the kitchen table. So how do you do that? Click and drag, move. So boom, it's right there. You can create a new layer with the tomato there. It wants me to put it on 450 by 220. 450 by 220. Let's get the info panel out. 450 by 220. 450Y. 450Y. I'm gonna get close and use the arrow keys. Hold on, where's 450? 450 is right here. So it wants the bottom to be like this. Yeah, 450 by 220. Yep, it's right here. Okay, so something like that. And then we're going to defringe the new layer 1 pixel. You see, I'm going to zoom in here and show you what's going on. Whoa, shoot. Okay, defringing is fixing this white aura that I have, that I brought in, okay? So I want to get rid of that because that does not look natural in here. So how do I defringe? I go to Layer, I go to Matting, I go to Defringe. And I want to defringe it by 1 pixel. It's already there. Pay attention to what's going to happen to the tomato here. Boom, it defringes. I still have a problem here, right? This little corner here has some white stuff here. This is not on the book, but I'll fix it up a little bit with my eraser. And now we'll click, 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 click. Just fix it up a little bit. There's some over here. I can use my left and right bracket, space bar to click and drag and move it over. I'll make it even smaller and I'll touch it up a little bit. Look at that. Boom, 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 boom. Okay? So you can do that if you want to be really picky about how it looks like. But this already looks a lot better than what it did before. Anyways. The book doesn't tell you to fix it up. I'm just being picky. And step number 5, you close the 4-3. Boom, close. Number 6, we rename the new layer to tomato. So let's go to the layers panel. This is going to be called tomato. Enter. And we're going to save your work. Compare. Okay, so I missed this somewhere. Somewhere I was supposed to, oh, here you go. I forgot to do this on step number 6. I was supposed to rename this tomato and then reposition my layer to be beneath the coffee cup. So click and drag on the layers panel, the tomato layer to be in between the table and coffee cup. Boom. It needs to look like this. We're going to save our work, Control S. And then we're going to close 4.2. And we go into lesson 2. I'm going to stop right here.